Hi, I'm Ann Katz. I'm director of Create Wisconsin, the state's community cultural development organization, and this is the Layered Onion. I'm a singer and an actor, my mother's family were all very musical and artistic, so I had the benefit of growing up surrounded by the arts. I grew up outside of New York City, so I was lucky that I had people who took me to Broadway shows. You know, my aunt and my grandmother took me to shows, and I got to, I had singing lessons, and that's what we did. We did the arts. And my career goal was to be a big Broadway star. I was a theater major, but I really I had no idea how to do that. So I kind of morphed into someone who is a community activist through the arts, and I get to sing every once in a while. We are the state's community cultural development organization. We're the only independent organization really doing what we do statewide. We provide advocacy, service, and development for everything connected to the arts and creativity in the state. So that means not only the nonprofit art sector and independent artists, but local government, economic development, education, politics, everything and everyone who cares about Wisconsin's future. And so we are really first and foremost a service organization, and we try to serve people, businesses, and communities in whatever way they need assistance. So we do everything from lobby the legislature for funding and resources, investment in the creative economy. We help individual artists think about how they can make their living as artists, whatever that means. We work a lot with arts and cultural and civic organizations it's always about funding, but really it's about how do you do the work that you're doing and make it happen. And more we're working with the local government and economic development world because we're all looking for the answer. We're all looking for the way to proceed in the 21st century when things are up in the air. And our whole system of how this country made money and our political system is all sort of in a state of flux. So we focus on creativity, innovation, entrepreneurship. We focus on small businesses and community engagement and making sure that everybody everywhere in the state has the opportunity to participate and benefit from the arts. So I've been everywhere in the state. I'm in awe of the creativity that's out there. People are doing amazing things without enough time, money, or staff. And so my job is to try to help keep that moving. We work with the Wisconsin Presenters Network, which is a coalition of presenting organizations, everything from the Overture Center in Madison to Big Top Chautauqua in Bayfield and kind of everything in between. We help them as a fiscal receiver. We do a lot of advice and counsel. And we do that pretty much with lots of different kinds of nonprofit organizations. We also work a lot with, and I hate to say this, but non-arts partners. So organizations that are working to make Wisconsin better. The League of Wisconsin Municipalities, the Wisconsin Towns Association, the Counties Association, UW Extension, the Main Street Program, Wisconsin Rural Partners. As I said, any organization that is trying to make things better out there in the state. And we do a lot of different kind of projects. We do meetings. We just did a series of small community forums with a coalition of those organizations where we went into a community and gathered people involved in community development and talked about what the issues are. We work a lot with the League of Municipalities. We give out awards to local officials who go above and beyond supporting the arts. We just gave an award to Alderwoman Malele Coggs in Milwaukee, who is a huge champion of the arts in Milwaukee. We helped the League with an artist in residence at their recent conference. I do a lot of speaking. You know, I talk about why the arts and creative economy are important. We show up. I think that's a way to say it. When an organization is trying to open an art center, or when they're having an annual meeting, or when they have a question, we try to be present, and not only online, which makes things easier, but showing up is important. For example, every year in January, I go up to the Chequamegon Bay area on Lake Superior, up here, to go to the Chequamegon Bay Arts Council annual meeting, because they're a really wonderful volunteer group that works to promote the arts in that area. And they do a meeting where they show off projects that are funded by the Wisconsin Arts Board. And so there's nothing that replaces actual human contact. So we show up. Public funding is a small part of how organizations and businesses do their work, or people make a living, but it's a very critical part, because funding from the state or the feds, or the county, when you talk about Dane Arts or the Madison Arts Commission, that's leverage, right? You get the seal of approval from the Arts Board or Dane Arts or the Madison Arts Commission, and you can go out into your community and say, look, we got this small but significant grant from the Arts Board to do this work. Will you help us match it? The reason that we have not been able to increase the funding over the years, there's personalities and politics involved in that. In some years, we've been instrumental in keeping the Wisconsin Arts Board from being cut. There have been years when that has been a danger. And in fact, right now, Missouri and New Hampshire have at the moment cut their Arts Council budget. Michigan, the legislature cut their budget, but the governor restored it, so that's good. But I mean, it's always volatile. We have seen small incremental increases over the years. Governor Evers has been very supportive. He put money into the budget for the Arts Board. Ultimately, in the political process, it didn't get in there at the very end, but we did make a lot of good contacts with the legislators, so we can go back next time. And I should say that it's not just the Arts Board. As the State Arts Council, we're working on getting funding for creative economy development so that there can be a stronger infrastructure around the arts. And in this last budget, the governor and the legislature did approve a new film office, which is something Wisconsin had. What I learned in the advocacy, because we advocated very strongly for the film office as well as for the Arts Board and creative economy development, there are a whole bunch of people in this state making films, working in the film world. And of course, those people are not just filmmakers, they're actors, and they work in other aspects of the arts. So having a film office is critical in many ways, including the fact that it supports the entire industry, which the Arts Board also supports. So because there will now be a state film office and taxing incentives, which is kind of how it works, a company looks at what kind of incentives a state's going to give them, and kind of chooses locations in part because of that. So now that structure is going to be in place in the state, all these different regional entities are springing up so that the Northwoods can promote themselves and the La Crosse area can promote that area. And Milwaukee is going to do a lot and Madison. We will continue to make the case that the State Arts Council is a critical component in the creative economy. And I can tell you, having worked with the legislature for a long time, it really isn't a partisan thing. Legislators on all sides of the aisle understand that our economy has changed. And, we don't make paper in Wisconsin Rapids anymore. We don't make cars in Janesville anymore. So what do we have? We have beautiful landscapes, creative people, vibrant communities, and we got to make something out of that. And so everyone understands that. We have to work with the politics to get the votes, but I can say that I've been impressed by how much the legislators understand what we're talking about. We just, we have to keep pushing the votes, but there's a lot of understanding out there. So I am relentlessly optimistic. The U.S. Department of Commerce has researched this sector, and in 2023, showed that the creative sector in Wisconsin, so again, nonprofit, for-profit, independent businesses, all sorts of different kind of creative businesses, is a $12.4 billion with a B, $1 billion industry, and it's got more jobs than the beer, biotech, and papermaking industries. So I say that every single day, all day, all day long. And I don't mean to be flippant about it, but we sort of just have to keep pushing that and kind of cut our way through the noise, and get people to hear it and understand it one heart and mind at a time. And we are doing that. And I'm sure you know this better than I do. There are studies and studies and studies about how the arts make people healthier, whether it's mental health, physical health. There's a lot of studies now about veterans and how the arts help heal in the military world. So that's solid research that's out there. And I have seen many programs where people who have been abused, kids who have whatever kind of issues, have the ability to express themselves in a creative way, and that makes the healing go better. I mean, the arts are not separate from anything in our lives, right? The arts are part of our economy. They're part of our quality of life. They're part of us as humans. And so the human aspect of the arts in terms of our mental well-being, our well-being in all ways, is critical. And in fact, I'm working in a coalition of statewide and local organizations to establish what we call a social RX program, which will provide funding for people to be involved in the arts as part of their mental health journey. And we're working with a company in Atlanta called Art Pharmacy. We've got a lot of support from entities like the Rural Wisconsin Health Cooperative, which is really interested in this, and some of the hospital systems, Marshfield Clinic, those kinds of Ascension in the state. And what we want to do is establish a framework so that anywhere you live in Wisconsin, you can be part of a program that's going to help with your mental well-being and your journey. Interestingly, as we've been exploring this new program, there are a lot of organizations out there that are starting their own programs. In Green Bay and Door County and Rhinelander, there's a lot of those kinds of programs already out there. And what we're always trying to do is bring them in together in a more cohesive whole, because otherwise it's just silo. You're doing this, and if somebody knows about it, then you get to do it. But the more that we can have the infrastructure and the shallot is absolutely, it's on the floor there, is absolutely a part of that. And what you're doing with this podcast, it's all connected. The more that we can make it into an infrastructure where it's not just going to be one grant and then it goes away, but it's going to be an ongoing process, that's really what we're trying to do. Because especially with a mental health healing journey, it's not just one thing. It's not just one thing that you do and then, okay, that's great. It's over time. So that's another thing I'm excited and optimistic about, because we've gotten such a good response from healthcare providers, from the arts world, from people that are trying to make this happen, of which you're part of, so it's moving forward. I would have everyone put down their screens and go out and help people and do some kind of community project. I mean, there are tons of people out there doing, we're all doing good things for our neighbors. The more that we can get people to participate in the democratic process and in their community, which includes voting, which includes, paying attention to local issues, I would find ways for people to pick their heads up and pay attention. We have a really big election year coming up next year. And Supreme Court, governor, legislature, Congress, people need to get involved. People need to vote. People need to make sure that the candidates hear from them. And the more that we keep raising the volume, the more they will hear it. Sometimes I say that I've been talking about the creative economy since the last millennium, which I have actually. And up until 2008, when the economy was roaring, it's like nobody paid attention. But now we're in a totally different universe. And I have a lot of legislators and political people saying, wait, what did you just say? Could you say that again? $12.4 billion, more jobs than whatever. And, this kind of systemic change is way too slow. I completely agree. But I can see that it's changing because people that didn't have to think about the creative economy before because they had a factory in their town and everybody worked at the factory. Well, that factory isn't there anymore. And even the manufacturing world has to be as creative as possible and come up with new ideas. And so people are the legislators, the political world is paying attention. We just have to keep surrounding them with this information, and over and over and over again. So I'm optimistic because I see it happening, and we'll just keep pushing. I would promote the connections that we have out in the state, whether it's, again, education, mental health, the economy, community issues, access, all of those things. I would promote the fact that we are really the catalyst as the independent development organization that's out there making things happen. I would ask people to pay attention to the politics. I mean, it's easy to say, I can't deal with it. I got to turn it off. But we as citizens of this country or residents of our community really don't have the luxury of doing that, because if we don't pay attention, bad things happen. So I would promote the fact that Create Wisconsin is out there sort of leading the way on the advocacy, the service, the development about everything connected to the arts and creativity statewide. And we're really trying to honor everything that's happening on the local level from the ground up and knit it together into a statewide whole. And that's the big stuff, that's the advocacy. And it's the little things. It's helping people figure out a specific problem, or promoting a specific event, or just celebrating whatever is going on. And there's a lot to celebrate. So I'd ask people to pay attention to the work that we're doing and give me a call and let's talk about what you want to do and how to get involved. I'm Ann Katz, Director of Create Wisconsin, the state's community cultural development organization, and this has been The Layered Onion.